Hello again. It is Friday, and it's about 12:30 here in Nova Scotia. So time for the devotional again. Welcome, and wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a great time outside. I can see a blue sky and the sun shining. Very nice day. We had a cold evening last night, but it was nice. It's just the same. We're gonna dive into our devotional here in just a moment. Just wanted to once again just make notice of my camera over here. Hoping to have a better setup soon. We have another camera that we use for most of our filming, but I just don't know how to set up here at the desk yet. So Pastor Chris has helped me with that. So maybe next week we'll have a slightly better camera in place for this. Anyways, Proverbs chapter 2, verse 20. We've been working our way through Proverbs one verse at a time. And so we're at chapter 2, verse 20, and drawing some connections here. So chapter 2 is a whole set of thoughts collected together as a single idea. When we get later on, like quite a ways from now, when we eventually get to chapter 10 of Proverbs, the rest of the book kind of goes along, or most of the rest of the book kind of goes along with these little proverbs, single proverbs. Each verse is its own kind of connected little thing. With a looser connection to the grander chapter. But these first number of chapters, there's a flow of thought in them, and so here in chapter 2, definitely that's the case. There's a flow of thought, and so I've been highlighting it at the beginning of each of these videos because I think it's important to understanding the pieces. But once again, the flow of thought in Proverbs chapter 2 is like it's being written to a young man saying, "Son, if you will follow after wisdom, if you'll pursue it and treasure her, if you will hold wisdom in your heart and so on, then it will become a shield to you to protect you and watch over you." And then it uses these two people, right, to protect you from the man of perverse speech, this man who will lie to you and draw you into evil, or from the adulterous woman who will try and seduce and lure you away from good to a not so good place. And so you have these two kind of archetypal draws or that will try and get you away from the paths of righteousness. But if you have wisdom in your heart and treasure it, it'll shield you in life in general, but it'll shield you in particular from these that want to draw you away from that. So that's the idea. And so after explaining those two types of people, in verse 20 it says, "So you will walk in the way of good men and keep to the paths of the righteous." And so that's a really great promise, right? So as we get to these last few verses of the chapter, so if you'll do this, you'll be protected from that guy, you'll be protected from that girl, and you will walk in the way of good men and keep to the paths of righteous. So that's the encouragement to the son. So this idea of the good men or the paths of the righteous, but you'll be a good man. So it's written, the idea of a young man growing up. My son, if you will do this as you grow up, you will become this good man. That's the idea. So let's explore that idea a little bit with our 4 questions today. So question 1, isn't everybody somewhat good, somewhat evil? Now there's this idea that kind of floats around out there, highly influenced, I would say, probably from Buddhism, that has the idea of the yin yang, the dark and the light circles swirling around each other with a dot in each. And there's this idea that it's out there in common popular culture nowadays, that everybody's got a little bit of good in them and a little bit of bad in them, that we're all a mixture of good and bad. From a Christian perspective, I would say that Christianity's view on that and the Bible's view on that is actually similar in a sense, that all humans were created by God to be like God. And there's something in us, in humanity, that the Bible refers to as the image of God. This idea that there's something in us that's godly, godlike. And that image of God, that sort of like a shared portion of the nature of God, or whatever you want to call it, this idea that in humans, a godliness is placed within us. We're meant to be like him. We're meant to be good. But then the Bible also tells us that that shortly after we were created, that we actually rejected the authority of God, and that in a sense, that place of God in our life, that image of God to some degree. We rejected it for the hope that we could be God in our own nature, in our own selves. And so we call this the fall of man. And the idea is that when we did that, we corrupted or contaminated our nature. And so you could say, in a sense, there's evil in us, that we have become evil in our inner being. And so in that sense, is there good and bad in humans? I guess in a sense, the image of God is this part of us that has potential for good, and the sin that is in us is evil. It is an evil within us. And so in that sense, then I would agree that there's some of that in each of us. But there's a draw and a tendency in humans because of sin that is put us on a course away from God. And so we're kind of predisposed, really, we're predisposed to go toward evil. And we are what we, in the theological terms, we're depraved. Humanity is depraved of good. It has been robbed of that goodness, in a sense, by our fall into sin. So I think it's a bit of an error to think that humans are kind of this blank slate, as if we're good and evil both. Well, that's like a negation, or both. We're really neither. It's where that really leads to thinking, doesn't it? But then we kind of justify ourselves. We say, "Oh, sometimes I do a bad thing. That's just my evil side coming out," or but I am really good in nature. And I think that's a wrong way to look at it. The fact is, you have potential to become good as God meant for you to be, if we can be freed from the sin in ourselves, which will lead us to evil, and that's where we'll go. So we need to treasure God and pursue Him and own Him in our life. And then, yes, we can find the paths of righteousness through God. It won't happen on your own, not because somewhere inside of you is the path of righteousness and all you have to do is find it. No, that's not the way it will work. You will fall into sin if you don't pursue the righteousness. So next question might be, aren't things good or bad based on motives? Like, can we say that a person is good or evil, basically saying they meant to do good, so it was good, or they meant to do evil, so it was evil? And in a sense, I would say, yeah, that's kind of what the Proverbs are saying in a way, that what happens inside yourself, where you decide to move toward, is going to define whether or not you're good or evil. I mean, it really is largely a motives, but not entirely. What happens if we, let's say this: what we do matters. It's not just what we meant to do. It is actually what we do. What we end up doing does matter. So we can't just excuse ourselves from culpability of making wrong choices by, well, I meant to do good. Okay, but you have an obligation to find out what really is good and then do it. And that's the pursuit of wisdom of God. You have an obligation within you to seek wisdom so that you will know how to do the good thing, rather than just going, well, I know it turned out to be a really evil thing I did, but it felt good to me. Well, that's a really terrible way to, in fact, it's the wrong way to, that's the seductress way of things. Or, well, it seemed good to everyone around me. Well, that's the deceiver's way. And what God says, you got to come to me so that you'll be able to choose the right way. And you can't just look inside yourself and find it. You got to come to God and find it. The world's version of what constitutes good, it fails to rise up to God's version, and God's version is what actually matters. Right? Question 3: do our actions? How much do our actions matter? Sorry, the question I wrote down wrong. How much do our questions actually matter, or our actions actually matter? And well, the answer is they actually matter a lot. They do matter a lot. What's inside you comes out, right? And so what you do it's because of what you've decided inside, where you've come from inside. Sure, it does. It comes out. So it doesn't matter what we do a lot, but it's not the entire defining thing of who we are. But it does matter a lot. So to put it in this way, Jesus talks about this idea of murder, and that it's wrong to murder. But if we think it's only wrong to murder, then we excuse ourselves of what's happening inside ourselves. We'll go, well, I really hate that guy. I won't cry if he dies. And we'll excuse ourselves. Well, that's just the dark part of me. but I didn't actually murder. And okay, well, that is something. You chose not to murder. That's good. But then Jesus goes on to say, well, you know what? If in your heart you harbor hate, you're like a murderer, and you actually become guilty of murder on the inside. Okay, so I would seem to say, well, that really matters that I hated this person. Yes, it does. It really matters. But then in another place, Jesus talks about it's out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. It's what comes out of a man that defiles him. And it's the idea that inside there, whatever's in there, actually does eventually come out in your actions. James says that our faith is demonstrated by our works, right? What we believe inside is demonstrated by what we do. And so what we do is very important, but largely because it's an example of what's happening inside us. And so we need to pursue good so that we can fill ourselves with good, with righteousness, and then out of us will come righteousness. If out of us keeps coming evil, then we haven't filled ourselves with good. Question 4, how does this connect the two people listed above? How does this idea of being a good man or finding the path of righteousness? If you pursue, this is kind of the wrap-up thing, but if you pursue that wisdom, then you won't be tricked by the person with the heart full of evil, and you won't be drawn to abandon morality and righteousness by the seductress, and you'll be more like what verse 10 said. Wisdom will enter your heart. And then, so wisdom will enter your inner person. It'll change you inside. And then you will be a good man, as it says in verse 20, right? You will be a good man and you will keep to the righteous path. That's the flow of thought through the chapter. You pursue good, it'll enter you and fill you up from the inside out. You'll be protected from the deceiver. You'll be protected from the seducer. And you will then do and be the good man and keep to the righteous path. The whole journey of God's wisdom is one of changing the inside and the outside, but changing you from the inside out. So that's it for today. Think about it, dwell on it. Desire to be a good man. If you have that desire in you, as Jesus said, if you hunger and thirst for righteousness, you will be filled. That's the idea. God bless each person. Lord, help us to pursue and love being good people, want to be good people, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm just going to look at my calendar, but Lord willing, we will be back on Tuesday. Yep, Tuesday at 12:30 is the plan, unless something changes in my world, and we will see you then, Tuesday at 12:30 for Proverbs chapter 2, verse 21. God bless. Have a great weekend.